Great, thanks, Josh. And then Carina, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah, I'm Carina, and I am based in Leipzig in Germany, and I'm a freelancing sound artist, radio artist, author, director, and curator. And I'm also associated with Geräuschkulisse, which is basically a normally monthly listening event where we gather people to listen and to promote acoustic arts. And we also offer workshops.
Great, thanks. And then Babak and Gert, you could also introduce yourselves and take part in whatever parts of the conversation and discussion later on you would feel like.
Good morning. I'm Babak. I'm, as Andrew already hinted at, one of the threesome he mentions behind Walk, Listen, Create. I'm also responsible for a bunch of apps that help to get you lost in urban environments. The most famous one is called the Derive app.
And hello, I'm Geert. I'm together with Andrew and Babak, as mentioned, the three the people behind Walk, Listen, Create and Soundwalk September. My personal interest as a writer is in, and as well as a musicologist, is in the performative element of soundwalking, walking, and walking in general. I worked the last years quite a lot with choreographers, dancers as well, musicians on soundwalk practices with augmented technology and locative audio. And I will be happy not to talk, but to be in the background and maybe interact with your questions that may occur during the conference.
That's great. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, I think we can maybe kick straight off with Andrew.
Okay, let me try my hand at the tech, and I'm jumping the gun. Okay, it's, are we there? How many people listen to audiobooks, music or podcasts on a phone when out and about? It's a rhetorical question, but if you want to put it in the chat and have a go at guessing at the proportion of people who get involved in this, but it's clearly a lot of people. And obviously it's been on the increase rapidly during the lockdown periods that various people have had to put up with. It's just a way of thinking about how popular it is now. It wasn't that long ago when we used to cross the street when we saw someone talking to themselves, but now they're talking into their mobile phone. And you don't feel so strange or odd. People don't look at you if you're wearing headphones out in the public arena. It's not an issue any longer. So yeah, they're using it all the time. And what I want you to start thinking about is when was it you first downloaded an app to your phone? I mean, phones are so ubiquitous these days. We all use them. In fact, some of us are so addicted to them that we're having to get therapy or help for trying to wean ourselves off our phones. We even have apps on our phones that tell us when we've been on the screen too long. So there's all sorts of kind of things going on. But let's think back. How long ago was it since we first had a phone, since we first downloaded an app? What I want you to sort of think about too is how did we listen to music or stories out and about before then? I mean, you know, how did we do it? Walkmans, we had Walkmans. They were pretty popular in the sort of, were they back in the 70s, the 80s, 90s? I don't know, I'm not quite sure. I think the first Walkmans were around in the sort of the late 70s, early 80s. And then we had MP3 players. And then sometimes we had to even carried around a portable CD player. I don't know whether anyone in the audience remembers those days. But yeah, it's quite difficult to kind of remember, and the kind of quality of what we were listening to was, you know, perhaps not quite as wonderful as it is digitally now. So how did I get involved in this? And why did I get involved in it? I've always been sort of a curious character. I've always been out, whenever I've gone out walking, I've been sort of observing and noticing what's around me. And I think that's what's so fascinating about walking and getting out, and what lockdown has actually generated, especially amongst a huge number of people in the UK, and I'm sure elsewhere, is an appreciation of their surroundings and the locale, and looking at nature and feeling more involved with their surroundings. And many of the people have started to really listen to their surroundings and really feel for their surroundings. And all of us know that there's a lot more to listening than just using your ears. So this was the sort of thing that's kind of always been of interest to me, is what it is about my surroundings. And in the mid-90s, I worked for a local authority, and I had a pretty awful job, actually. The job was to try to discourage people from driving their cars. And with a last name like mine, you can imagine that's pretty difficult, because I got loads of jokes thrown at me by the media about being stuck in traffic. So there was never ending media hassle that I got. And so what I tried to do to deflect the media and get on with the work was, what I started doing was commissioning artists, musicians and performers to make interventions in the everyday, in the daily routine of people who were commuting or getting to work. And the ways in which we did that, and I was very lucky to have the budget and the commissioning power to do it, was we started off with putting actors on the buses reading poetry. We also did, we hid things in the countryside and got, which was sort of linked to rural country. It was based in Wiltshire, so Wiltshire folklore was hidden around. And we did a lot of things with oral history, where we got people talking about days when there weren't cars, or cars weren't so dominant, and walking and cycling was more prevalent. And then I started thinking about, oh, I could get really crafty here. What if Neolithic man met Roman centurion on the way to getting to work in Salisbury? Could we start to fictionalize what people encountered on their commute? Could we do that through producing something live, or could we do it in some way in which it could be recorded and they could listen to it? And this was back in the 90s that I was up to this sort of mischief. So what really brought me up to speed with Soundwalking was an incredible piece that was created by an organization called Platform. Now, Platform is actually an activist group who have been for many years protesting about BP, British Petroleum, and their activities in the Niger Delta and elsewhere in the world. And they won some Arts Council funding, and they created something called And While London Burns. Now, And While London Burns came to me, how I got to find out about it was that a friend of mine who worked in the city sent me a copy of the FT, and the FT had reviewed it, which is pretty extraordinary. And the review actually was very glowing about it, and almost didn't actually get the underlying message. But the story is basically around, well, let's start off with the route. The route you're encouraged to follow follows the route a barrel of oil would take while it was exchanged on the different exchanges from raw material to refined product. So you would literally walk from the different exchanges, the commodities exchange, the London Stock Exchange, or whatever, the foreign exchange, to get to each different place to hear the story. And the story was the story of a character who was a trader of oil, and his girlfriend, and the fact that his girlfriend had thrown it all up. She used to work in the city too. She'd thrown it all up to go and live on a yurt in Cornwall, and he was, you know, the story is he's philosophizing and reflecting on what she might be doing and what he's doing. And there's an operatic score. So all this is built into a recording that you could listen to on your MP3 and walk through the City of London. So I'm actually going to play you a little excerpt. Well, I hope I'm going to play you a little excerpt. And I just need to change my screen. So just wait one moment. No, I can't do it that way. I have to do it the way I did it before. Forgive me if I do this. Don't want you to start quite at the beginning. Can we listen to hear that?
Act 1, Fire.
Third quarter earnings came in ahead of estimates after record oil prices lifted results in its refining business by more than expected.
They stole her nipples.
Lucy whispered in my ear, pointing to the Starbucks mermaid logo. Before they became a multinational, Lucy assured me, the mermaid had nipples and a pair of provocatively spread fishtails. The siren's seduction has become a lot more modest now. That was the last time I saw Lucy.
Hello, I'm your guide. Follow me and everything will be fine. Stick close to me, keep up with the rhythm of my footsteps. I don't want to lose you. We're going to walk together through the web of institutions that extract oil and gas from the ground, feeding the global economy, fueling our lives, releasing carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. I will take you to fund managers, banks, insurance companies, lawyers, advertising agencies, and recruitment agencies. This web of companies I call the carbon web. Today, we're going to follow a particular thread. We will track the scent of BP, British Petroleum, or Beyond Petroleum, as they call themselves now.
Okay, well, I hope that gave you a little hint of And While London Burns. And I have to say, I was really excited by this because what I wanted was I wanted to make stuff like it. And I wanted to get involved with them and see, you know, how you could make compositions like this. And so what I did was I approached them and got in contact with them, and they said, "Oh, no, we're not really interested in this. We're off protesting against BP." So I had to sort of go out and hunt my way out to find out what I could do and where I could do it. What I did do was they ran an evening class at the London School of Economics called The Body Politic, Art and Activism. And I joined that and got involved in that. And through that, by happenstance, I got myself onto a walking and art residency in Banff in the Canadian Rockies, which is an incredibly well-equipped and well-staffed art centre. And much of my frustration was that I actually had no training in arts whatsoever. So I hadn't got a clue how to use the kit, which was a bit daft. But I was surrounded by musicians, performers and artists, all of whom were interested in walking. And so what I started doing was interviewing them to find out why walking was the catalyst for their practice. And I recorded those interviews and started podcasting them. And this is in 2007 or 8. So I'm one of the granddaddies of podcasting. These were in the days of dial-up modems. Gosh, did you ever know there were dial-up modems? There were dial-up modems, and nothing could be greater than a 10 megabyte file, because you couldn't download anything if it was more than 10 megs. So, you know, it was a strange old day. So I recorded these interviews asking people, and what these people revealed more and more was their frustration that the work that they had made was so ephemeral that it disappeared, that it was made for a festival and there was nowhere to keep it. There was nowhere that people could go back and listen to it or participate in it. And that's what I was thinking about. What if I could do that, and I could archive this thing and get involved in some way in promoting and creating new sound walks. So one of the things I started doing, which I was really interested in, was how the rhythm of the word, the spoken word, could encourage people to do more and to develop more. And you'll probably all be familiar with a haiku, which originates in Japan but was westernized really after the Second World War. And you know, a constrained way in which we write about a reflection of a walk or about our surroundings, whether natural ones, and whether we write about ourselves and tell the story of ourselves in a very constrained way. And in 2011, we pitched, myself and an American friend of mine, pitched to do a geolocative piece across the city of Vancouver for the Festival of Haiku they have there, where in fact people would encounter haiku and be able to compose haiku and leave haiku across the city. So this was something that I was really interested in trying to make that kind of thing happen. So during 2016, I ran a sound salon on a monthly basis, which we set up between 3 universities, Goldsmiths, Greenwich and Ravensbourne, down here in South London. And it was all about really trying these things out. So we used to meet in a pub 1 month, the next month go and do some field recordings, and the third month have a listening room event. And what was really key, and Carina I think has possibly encountered this too, is that people love listening to each other's work. So you know, that was something that we really encouraged and really found was helpful. I also started running Soundwalk workshops where I called it sounding out your neighborhood. And this was listening to your neighborhood without any technology, just listening to the sounds, deep listening of the places in which you lived, and then adding sounds to it, either through using musical instruments or kinetically playing sort of sticks on railings or on, you know, manhole covers that creaked or doors that opened or closed, all sorts of clever tricks like that. And then what more I added to it was I used isolated speakers, Bluetooth speakers, which I placed around places so that people could hear or overhear different things and wonder what they were. These were sorts of the tricks, the trades that I was learning on the job and trying. And then in 2017, at the end of the sound walks, the sound salons, we sort of had a focus, which was we were going to have Sound Walk Sunday. And I was very fortunate. I met Geert Vermeer, who's on the call and introduced himself, the last person to introduce himself to you. I met Geert, and he was running an event in La Reumur in southwest France, which was a whole group of walkers and sound artists coming together. So we combined what we were doing. And what we had started was a small archive, a treasure trove of sound walks that had been made by other artists that had been lost, or, you know, had technology had superseded what you could do with it. So we had that small archive, and we ran Soundwalk Sunday. Unfortunately, I'd forgotten that Notting Hill Carnival would have fallen on that day. So most of the press and media chased after the Notting Hill Carnival and not about Soundwalk Sunday. But it planted a seed, and the seed has started to grow. So what happened in 2019, because I had a year off in 2018, but 2019, we brought Soundwalk Sunday back, and there was so much interest in it that we started to find that people wanted to get involved right across the month of September. So that's what we called it. We called it Soundwalk September. And we had a live launch event in Frome in Somerset, and we had events all around the world coming together. And we started thinking about how we could expand and develop Soundwalk September. And we created a website platform which Babak has been involved in creating, which is called Walk, Listen, Create, which it has become this ever-increasing archive of sound walks, of which it's a treasure trove you can dip into. And what we started to do in 2020, just before the pandemic, was look forward to what we could do in Soundwalk September 2020 and what we could get happening. And we started creating the idea of having awards. So we set up awards for different for sound walks and listening walks that had been produced during the year, and then we would have a jury who would judge and select them. And we recruited an advisory board, and they've acted as the jury or as the judges of the awards. And for 2019, the winner. 2020, the winner was, one of the winners was Forest Talk Radio, which is a geolocated piece in which you walk through a woodland and you encounter the trees talking to each other. So I'm not going to play you that, but you'll find it on the Walk, Listen, Create website. So what we're really here, and you know, I've put a little nudge in for Josh, so I could keep Josh excited too, because Josh has been fantastic. He's been a great supporter, not only of Walk, Listen, Create, but of Soundwalking generally. And I'm really delighted that I'm sharing a panel with him, because I've frequently done Soundwalk workshops where I've told people about Echoes and shown them how to use it. But clearly I'm not the expert, and the great news is we have the man who invented it here. So that's fantastic. And Music with Trees is one of those pieces which included, if I'm get this right, the Royal Academy of Music and the Royal Parks, and they've created a geolocated sound walk in which you walk amongst the trees and hear compositions which are responding to each of the species. But there are all sorts of different things that we're uncovering and finding creatives remotely spread across the world who are creating incredible work, whether you call it dark tourism, there's pieces which are place-based journalism, locative novellas, there are natural soundscapes, all sorts of things. There's stuff that you will not believe out there. And one of those makers is Carina Pesch. She has made fantastic work, and I'm really excited about hearing from her too. So we'd love you to get involved. We'd love you to put your hand up and have a go at making Soundwalks yourself. And we'd love you to enter the Soundwalk September and hopefully pick up an award and get involved in Soundwalk September 2021. And I think I just have here is just the open call. We literally published the open call yesterday or the day before. You're pretty much the first group of people that we're talking to about it. As I say, it's open to anyone making a listening or sound walk, a geolocated piece, as well as if you wish to run an event or a workshop. We'd be delighted to hear from you. And thank you very much, Lau, for giving us the opportunity to talk about sound walks.
Thanks very much, Andrew. That's a great way to kick this off. And I think you made a really great segue as well to Josh. So let's just move straight in with what Josh has to share about soundwalking and geolocated work.
Hi, yeah. Thanks, Lau. Thanks, Andrew, as well, for quite flattering introduction. Yeah, so I'm Josh. I'm director of Echoes, which is a platform for creating geolocative audio experiences. And yeah, we do center on audio experiences, although we do get a lot of inquiries about doing VR experiences. It is an audio-centric platform. And it's probably best if I give you a bit of a background about Echoes as well. So although Andrew said that I somehow am the inventor of geolocated soundwalks, that's not really true. Soundwalks has a very long history dating back to I think early 20th century with Cage, or even before. You could probably trace it back to Satie, who would go on walks through the park to get inspiration. He would listen to his surroundings, and the music would come from his surroundings. So certainly, if you're talking about soundwalks as not just geolocative experiences, then it has a long lineage, which I'm not really going to go into too much here, but be aware that soundwalking is, as a practice, is something which is about going outside and listening to your surroundings and interacting with those surroundings, or allowing those surroundings to interact with you in some way. And personally, my first experience with soundwalks was being asked to create a geolocative audio walk for Hanoi, where I was living at the time, as part of a locative audio project, which was taking place in Manchester and across Europe, and there was some collaboration in the US as well. And I was really inspired by this concept of linking audio and location. And we created this soundwalk, which was a walk through the streets of Hanoi. We placed pieces of audio along the streets, which were linked to the various trades of those streets. It was a really great experience creating it, and we were also told that it was a great experience listening to it as well, and unlocked something that wasn't previously there. So I became obsessed with this idea of unlocking this kind of genius loci, the spirit of the place, through audio. My background is in sound and music as well. I trained as a classical composer. You know, I did a lot of technology and contemporary music as well, but I did study in academia. So I was interested in putting together the idea of this technology enabling a kind of mindful experience in the place in which you were. And over time, it made me realize that this idea of linking sound and location is really unlocking a separate medium, separate from concert composition or creating sound art or installation art. So linking location and sound is taking somebody to a place and forcing them to listen in a particular way. And how you deal with that, how you explore that is really up to you. And Echoes was my response to that, which is allowing people to create their own experiences which unlock the power of place and sound. So we started developing a platform of our own. After we initially used a platform called Sonic Maps, which has had a kind of revamp recently. I'll put a link in the chat in a minute. We took Sonic Maps as a kind of base and thought, okay, well, how can we improve this? Sonic Maps was also kind of stopped at that time. So we ended up creating our own platform, and people started coming to us and saying, oh, can we create our own sound walks? So we opened up the platform, and from there, it's just grown over the last 5-6 years to become a global platform of sound walks. The concept is really triggering sounds using GPS. We add in a few extra things like being able to add text and images and things like this, but the core of the experience is this listening experience. And the philosophy behind Echoes, our kind of mantra is the phone in pocket experience. So you should be in your location and listening, and not looking at your device trying to read a map or something like this. So it should be as encompassed within the device as much as possible. Yeah, so over time we ended up doing quite a few different collaborations with different organizations. We started building apps for other people who wanted to do things which went beyond the Echoes platform. and that's how we've made money over time, is by through these collaborations. I'll mention a couple of them in a minute, which might be quite interesting inspiration for anybody wanting to get into this. And I hope some people in this workshop might want to get into this after this. I was going to talk a little bit about the kind of experiences you can create with Echoes. Andrew's mentioned this a little as well, that there's a wide breadth of things that you can do. But to me, there's the kind of two extremes. One is a kind of museum tour, a guided tour, where somebody guides you and gives you informative spoken content about a given place, such as you would get on a tour bus or something like this. This is the kind of, this is what certainly some people on our platform use it for. So, you imagine you get in a car, you get on a bus, you walk around a city, you get on a bike. And as you get to various locations, you would hear about the history of that location. And that's what a lot of people think about when they think about tours, guided tours. And a lot of the platforms which are already available out there are focused on this. So you can do this with Echoes, but it's definitely not limited to that. We, because this philosophy is linking sound and location, we allow you to add as many sounds to a map as you want, and then layer those sounds as well. And we have different playback options, which enable you to control how the sound is played back. And more recently, we've been doing work with 3D audio and ambisonics. So further unlocking this idea of having reactive sound which reacts to the location and your physical being as well. So at the other end of the spectrum from the guided tours is this idea of a sound experience, the geolocative sound walk, which takes advantage of the location, the place, and the sounds that you can use to create an experience. And I'll come to the examples in a minute, but I'll quickly talk about other platforms, because I have been talking about Echoes a lot. But Gesso is another platform which has come up, which you can do quite similar things with. And again, they focus on doing either this idea of a linear sound walk, a kind of walk from place to place and get information about something, and the non-linear sound walk, which is placing sounds on a map and then triggering them and walking around, which unlocks a whole set of other possibilities. So go and have a look at Gesso. I'll put the link in the chat. Let me see if I can do this easily. There we go, that's Gesso. I'll put Echoes in as well. There's also Sonic Maps, which is where the kind of influence for Echoes came from. I'll put that in as well so you can have a look. And Voice Map is another platform which is wholly focused on guided tours. You can sell your tours through that platform as well. If you're inspired by this as well, I would say, and you're thinking about going beyond what is possible with one of these platforms, you can start thinking about how to do it yourself as well. And Unity is a great platform for doing that. If you've got any ability with coding, then Unity is a good starting point for those kind of experiences. And then, writing something yourself or commissioning somebody to create an experience for you using this technology is another way to get into it. But obviously, the platforms which I've mentioned are a really good starting point for anybody wanting to get into that. Yeah, which brings me along to inspiration for creating these experiences. So first and foremost, I'd like to mention Walk, Listen, Create is what I really wanted to do, which was create a portal for people to find these kind of experiences, where to do them, when to do them, who's doing it, everything about it. And the guys at Walk, Listen, Create have created that, which is a fantastic resource. There is tons of stuff on the website, loads of things that you can find to do. And there's also Soundwalk September coming up as well, where there's an opportunity for you to present your Soundwalks and get a platform to promote them and get people doing them as well. There was a really fantastic response last year. Some really incredible work which you can go and explore, go and listen to. and also learn about the creators of those pieces. Also talked about them as well. So yes, I can. That's my number one port of call is walk, listen, create. So the second one, we did a project with a composer called Ellen Reed in New York. They're actually starting to do some more sound walks all over the US, but she created, in collaboration with the New York Philharmonic Orchestra, a sound walk for Central Park in New York, which spanned the breadth of Central Park from the north end to the south end, and layered musical stems, pieces of audio which interlocked with each other over the top of each other, so that as you walk around, the musical experience changes. This is the kind of philosophy behind Echoes, or what attracted me to it. So she commissioned each of the individual orchestra members of the New York Phil to record these little segments, which were then layered over the top of one another. So there are some choral sections, there are some instrumental sections, and as you walk around, this soundscape changes. So as you're walking around the lakes, for example, you would find a different musical experience from when you're walking through the trees. But again, this is kind of the thing that you have to be there to experience it. That's the beauty of it. And hopefully she'll be doing one. She's talked about doing one in London at some point. So there may be something which is slightly more accessible. Andrew mentioned the Music for Trees project that we did, which is a collaboration with the Royal Academy of Music and the Royal Parks, which we did a couple of years ago. The students composed individual pieces for trees in Regent's Park, and the sounds were placed over the trees so that they kind of mimicked the canopy of the trees. So that as you got within the vicinity of each tree, these musical compositions would play and then begin to overlap as you move between the trees. Really amazing experience and very mindful. And that's also the thing which attracts me to these, to sound walking as well. It's a very mindful experience, brings you closer to the place. It doesn't distract you by you overly, overtly using technology. It allows you to be in the place and to escape from maybe your everyday life, try something different, and offer something different from just putting on your headphones and listening to music or listening to a podcast. Yeah, so the Royal Parks was a great breakthrough for us, and a really good way to experience the parks as well. I'm just going to put in, there's walk, listen, create. Don't spend too much time looking at these links now, but I will put them in just so we've got them. There we go. That's Ellen Reed, and that's the Royal Parks one. There's also some great practitioners. This is Duncan Speakman, who does a lot of things which go beyond geolocative audio walks. They're mainly event-based experiences, but very much use sound and very much link sound and location with a kind of sense of serendipity as well. But go and have a look at some of his work. That's some interesting things to look at. There's of course Janet Cardiff. I'm sure many of you know. She's an amazing sound practitioner. Another platform which you might want to go and listen to in terms of inspiration is Appery, which has been around for a long time, which is a sound map, literally. So you can go to different places and you can find sounds which have been captured in different places. A great starting point and some, good inspiration for you. Locus Sonus, similar to Appery, but takes a different, takes a slightly different tangent, which is live recordings. So you can go and literally listen into the rainforest in Japan, or Brazilian rainforest, or a lot of places on there which have live mics which you can go and listen to. That's a fantastic project. And with that in mind, there's another interesting project here which is called Reveil, waking up in the morning. So this tracks the sound of the dawn moving around the world on a particular day. I can't remember when they did it last year. It might have been solstice, summer solstice. So you can basically tune into the dawn chorus as it moves around, follows the sun around the world. It's great experience as well. That's the kind of crux of my inspiration. I don't know if I've gone over yet. I'm talking too much as well. That was nodding at me. I just wanted to wrap up. We are working, I mentioned 3D audio and ambisonics. We've done some work with this, and we've got a lot of people who are starting to work with 3D audio, which is basically placing sounds in the real environment around you and being able to approach them. If you're interested in doing that, if you're interested in working with what is essentially audio AR, please do get in contact. You can contact us through the websites hello@echoes.xyz. Can't even remember our own email address. I'll put it in the chat as well if you've got an interest in that. And yes, do apply for Walk, Listen, Create if you feel you've got something, and go and get some inspiration from them. So thank you very much, and yeah, hope you've got some little inspiration there.
That's very great. Thanks very much, Josh. There's a very quick question we could probably go to right before we go to break. So Remoy Phillips said, is the goal with these apps and projects to record as native and analogically as possible, sort of straight into the phone mic and publish in the moment, or is it more about having high quality equipment and producing the stuff that then you put into the app? Would you like to share your thoughts on this?
Yeah, we try to not discourage, but we try to encourage people to have as high quality a recording practice as possible. So recording through your phone, the mics are terrible. Apple and Google and every other Samsung company has spent decades improving the cameras on the phones, but the microphones remain as awful as ever. So please go out, if you're wanting to create a sound walk, go out and buy a handheld recorder. They are leagues ahead of the microphone on an iPhone or smartphone. So yeah, I would say you don't need to produce it as much as possible. I mean, you can be Chris Watson and do absolutely perfect, clean recordings with no processing whatsoever, and then place them in a sound walk. But I would emphasize high quality. Yeah.
That's great, thanks. And Stella Pierce was asking about any recommendations for recorders. I could probably also say that there's, if you don't want to invest in a handheld recorder, even something as simple as a Video Mic Me Rode to a Video Mic Me, which just attaches to your phone, but it's still a condenser mic, and it's not amazing, but it is like 80% great, and will do the job for a lot of for a lot of what people will be trying to do. But yeah, handheld.
Can I jump in there for a second, maybe?
Oh yeah, Babak, go on.
I agree with Josh that high quality recordings, or quality recordings, are of course always better than low quality recordings. But having to buy a recorder or a mic might be a bit inconvenient, particularly with newer models of phones that don't have an audio jack. So then you have to come up with some kind of solution that ties into Bluetooth, which is also not ideal if you want to record on your phone, or connect via the not so standard port on your phone. But one way in which you can very easily vastly improve the quality of the recording that you do with your handheld device, particularly when you move around, is to put a sock over the microphone of your phone. So really over the phone, because it works like a windsock. There's a nicer word for that thing, but I forget it. It works like a windsock. So it takes the noise, a lot of the noise out of the recording. A very low-tech solution to improving the quality of your recording.
Yeah, definitely. Dead cat's the other word for it. That's not a nicer word. Yeah, the Zoom H4n is a great one, or H2, the H2, I think. Any of the Zoom recorders, they're great, incredibly robust. I dropped one down a set of stairs, and it's, they're really robust, really cheap. They're a great starter recorder. I'd recommend those.
The positive of Zoom over Tascam, which are also really great handheld recorders, is that Zooms can be used as a USB mic. So if you're doing any sort of live streaming or any sort of even conferencing, you want to play some music in the room, it's possible, whereas with Tascam, which is another brand of very popular handheld recorders, you can't do that mostly. But yeah, there's loads of, if you basically go online and just look for podcasting microphones, USB microphones, there's tons of them that you can get, or just a handheld with batteries would do the trick if you don't want to carry a computer or device with you. Let's go on a break. Let's take 5 minutes, meet back here at past, and we'll kick it off with Carina. So feel free to turn your videos off if you're in the panel and turn it back on in 5 minutes. Great. Well, 5 minutes is just about enough time to really grab a glass of water or a cup of tea. But I hope you've done that. And now we can move on to the next session with Carina Pesch. So Carina, on to you.
Yeah, hello. During the break, somebody asked for 3D audio, and I already answered the question, but I brought my little dummy head. It's very easy to do 3D recordings with this one. It's very cheap. Those are actually for acupressure. Is that an English word? I'm not sure. The Chinese kind of thing where you massage the ear. But they work really nicely for putting mics in them. And then you get really nice, natural sounding 3D audio. And it's just like $15. So quite cheap, because the original one costs, I don't know, 5,000 euros or something. So it's very expensive. But yeah, that's just a side note. I try to share my screen. Okay, you should now see the little presentation. Yep. So please feel free to add comments and questions to the chat box or the Q&A box it is. And we could also invite people onto the stage with video and audio. Just raise your hand if you have any further needs of discussion or want to ask more questions. So first, this is walking sound composition. And who am I, or what do I do? I said it briefly in the beginning, but here is a list, if it comes. No, it does not. Because I do really a lot of different formats. I do radio features, or maybe better known as radio documentary among English speakers. But they are a bit more adventurous and experimental. I do cut-up collages, radio fiction, high-quality field recordings. I also do voice art like sound poetry and voice impro like automatic speaking. That is a technique invented by Antje Vohwinkel. I do installations, sound walks, of course, performances, and any kind of crazy interventions in public space. I also give workshops like today, or for universities, cultural institutions, for young and old folks. And then there's our NGO Geräuschkulisse, where I organize, curate, moderate, gathered listening events and workshops. Workshops such as one led by Chris Watson, for example, started last October and is hopefully going to finish with a real-world expedition soon. Yeah, why do I think composers need sound walks? To me, sound walking is all about drifting, relaxing, exploring. So it's basically the same state of being that I find when listening to music, or at least if it's good music. And the world is full of music. Birds sing, whales sing, but even the tram can sing. And the world is so much prettier if I perceive it as music. Even unbearable sounds like too many cars or construction sites can be so much more fascinating when we focus our attention on their musical elements like melody and rhythm. And suddenly those unbearable sounds become quite fascinating and interesting. I think for any musician or composer, it is a good practice to pay attention to existing sounds and how they are organized and structured, like time and space. So we can actually learn a lot from environmental sounds, and they tell us a lot, and then enable us to derive a narration or music from even daily experiences that people already know. We can get them from the place where they know the place already, and then shift these experience towards the extraordinary. And that to me is quite a source of inspiration. And I do feel that we all need a lot more practice listening to and not only hearing the world. Our world has gotten so loud that we constantly filter out sounds, and we do not depend on our ears as much as we used to when they warned us even during sleep if a predator was coming or something like that. So I don't want to promote getting rid of these filters. That would probably drive us crazy in the world we live in. But learning to turn them on and off as we wish is really helpful. So what kind of sound walks do I do? I do recorded sound walks or sound walk compositions. I do guided group sound walks and collective performative sound walks, or I mix these different kinds of sound walking. So first on the soundwalk compositions or recorded soundwalks, basically all my compositions start with a soundwalk. And that is due to the kind of compositions that I do. I only work with found sounds, so I have to go out and listen first. And some of my compositions are recorded soundwalks, so they portray a certain space or path. Now, what I do mean by composed sound walks is, first of all, my individual and very subjective movement in space, or how I move and place the mic, is the first act of composition. Especially distance to the recorded sound source is fixed after recording. It cannot be altered in post-production. So how far away the thing that I record is from me, this is something that you cannot get rid of in the end. And as I work a lot with binaural recordings, so little omnidirectional mics in my ears, therefore my movement becomes a dance with sound basically. And I love that experience of moving and listening, very focused but open-minded, and following the sounds that trigger my interest, being lost in the moment and playing like a child often. And then the second act of composition is at the computer, selecting, editing, and processing the sounds. And then the other kind of compositions that I do from my sound walks is when I use specific recordings and place them into another context, or mix these two approaches, since I really like to play with the borderline between fiction and reality. So what is perception, what is the real place, and what comes in that can be imagined at that place. And I want to give you two examples of soundwalk compositions that I did for the works I did during my current residency with river sounds. I will only give you the links. That is link 1, please. And you can listen later on. But this project is so fantastic. I have to show you definitely to give you the way to explore this, these European rivers. So the project assembles different artists from all over Europe, and they record a river and do an artist talk, a sound walk, and then in the end, an interactive composition that is accessible on a digital platform, and you get to compose with the movement of the mouse on the screen, like recompose the composition that the artists did already. And I hope you will find the links in the chat box. And this interactive platform is not yet accessible, but please keep an eye and ear open. It will soon be on their website, and there you can find it then. And I am sharing this sound walk also at the river Weiße Elster here in Leipzig, because it shows the mixture of portraying the real place and then moving it, shifting it into imagination and fiction. Yeah. And the other example is an album that I did, The Ears May Travel, it is called. And I started this album during the first lockdown last year. It was a very spontaneous creation, really. Suddenly I had free time because all my jobs were cancelled, and I browsed my field recording archives and felt like finally doing something with all the nice sounds collected. And my mind at the time was also occupied with the sudden withdrawal into privacy, with all the borders being closed. But for whom they were closed and who could still pass seemed a highly political issue. For example, in Germany, nobody was allowed in anymore, but then there were they had to harvest asparagus, and so they just shipped in cheap workers from Eastern European countries, and they were working for starvation wages while everybody else was safe at home. So these were the kind of issues that I was occupied with at the time. So I wanted the album not only to be a vacation for the senses, but so many people yearned for this vacation for the senses, but I also wanted to raise awareness for the political dimension. So to offer a friendly reminder that traveling and freedom of movement are a basic human need and right for all. And I want the world to acoustically experience the vitality of the world outside of their homes and borders, to turn outward amidst all the inwardness and self-centeredness of these times. Thus, the image that you can see right here. So plants need water to grow, and I think we need movement and exchange to grow. And this is exactly what soundwalking means to me. And this album assembles very different kind of compositions. A lot of them are set in nature, because people were yearning for natural sounds to invite nature into their homes when they couldn't get out anymore. But I will play you a bit of Sacré-Cœur, Inside Out, which takes us from inside the cathedral in Paris all the way down Montmartre. Please use your best headphones while I will play this sound sample, because it's a binaural recording and can only be experienced with headphones. And I'm so excited how you will feel in the middle of so many people, because we're not really used to so many people anymore.
Thank you so much. La, 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 la. Bonjour. Avancez s'il vous plaît, soyez le bienvenu. C'est gentil. Good afternoon. Please open back pizza. You're welcome. Thank you so much.
There was only stairs for us too. So
Yeah.
we were too far up.
Good afternoon, please open back pizza. Buenas tardes. Abre la mochila per favore, la bolsa, la vida, la cartera, la maleta. Oh là là. Allez, c'est gentil. C'est génial. Merci.
Excusez-moi, vous parlez français? Anglais?
Oui. Un peu.
Ça vous dérange pas de juste prendre une photo de nous avec la vue?
Oui.
Merci. Merci.
Если они подумали, что мы это дорога пошли, не обратили.
방금 내 돌아가 한번 타긴 타. 얘도 타긴 탔다.
Mira que ella con la patita arriba.
Sí, aquí iba a comer.
Yeah, so I hope it came through this whole digital platform as binaural and stereo audio. I haven't tried it before this way. I hope it worked. There's also the links number 2 in the chat, hopefully now, to the full album. So this was cut up. It's much shorter in the way you heard it now than it is in the original. It takes about 20 minutes from inside the cathedral all the way down to the, what's it called, carousel. Yeah, so if you like, you can listen some more later. And before I move on to the guided group sound walks, the other kind of sound walks that I do, this would be a good time for questions, comments, a first discussion, if we have any questions already.
We have a few. There's someone. I mean, this is a broad question, but someone just asking what headphones you recommend. I guess that's an easy one to just type your answer. So anyone who would like to type an answer to that question, you could just type that in. Someone says, Jacopo Senni, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, so I'm not going to try. Says, what's your view on multiphonic speaker setups? I presume you mean with many recorders or many microphones. Do you have anything to say to that, Carina, or somebody else?
Well, yes, there's a lot to say on that subject matter. So my favorite headphones are these, the AKG K271 MK2. They're really good quality and very clean sound, but they're quite big, but I like them a lot, and they're not too pushy on your ears. And about the microphone setups, I mean, it really depends on what you want to do. We heard before, it's always about good quality. I do agree, and at the same time, I possibly disagree in some situations, because if you have a certain kind of narrative, then sometimes a really bad quality or a phone quality can tell a lot. And so I don't judge sounds by general parameters, but always ask, what do I want from this sound and the sound quality? And then the sound needs to have this kind of quality. And sometimes a shitty quality can tell so much that I'm just fallen for this bad kind of quality. Yeah, I mean, a setup that I use quite often with different microphones is a directional microphone, so a shotgun, which really points to the sound source that you want to record, and then combine it with a stereo setup to have the space, for example. That is quite a usual setup, for example.
Great, thanks. And what about many speakers? So Jacopo meant also with many speakers.
Speakers. Well, many speakers would be more for installations, probably. I mean, it's not, yeah. Yeah, it's so broad. It always depends on what you want to do. If you want your audience to be really immersed in the soundscape, then a multi-channel setup is quite handy. Or if you want to get really the impression of space, then also a lot of speakers, and the more speakers you have in different heights, maybe even, then the more realistic it gets. Or headphones and binaural recordings can also do a great job in creating space.
Great, that's great. So are you sharing anything else in your presentation, or are you happy to?
Yes, I could continue.
Okay, great. Let's continue then.
Yeah, so the other kind of sound walks that I do is guided group sound works. And most of them I do with my colleagues Lena Löhr and Martina Weber from Geräuschkulisse, which translates to soundscape, by the way. And we do them in different cities. We have 3 that we continue and keep offering on a regular basis in Leipzig. But if anybody wants to invite us to their city, we love to discover cities that we do not know by heart and show you the hidden sides or new side of the city you think you know, because often we think we know a place quite well, but there's always more to discover. So our sound walks are composed, meaning we explore the space and then curate a path with certain listening spots, and we interact with the environment and invite the group to listen and partly also to interact with their bodies and voices. And I will play you a little piece of a live on air experiment, a composition, sound and audio walk that we did with Synapse Festival in Leipzig in 2019, together with sound artist JD Zazie. And this is how our sound walks always start, with some yoga for the ears. And the images that I will show you at the same time, they show how such a start of the sound walk can look like, and then also the score for this particular sound walk that we did during Synapse Festival.
Now open both ears and listen again to everything around you. And now slowly shift and go from white space around you a little bit closer and closer and closer to yourself, to your own body. And don't listen to the sounds that are far away, but get closer to your body so that you can hear your own body sounds, your breathing. During the next 1.5 hours, we will try to get back to this exercise, to focus on different directions and close and far away sounds. And I won't talk anymore.
So basically for this very wide work, there was not only a sound walk, but also composition and live on air experiment. My colleagues Lena and Martina led 2 groups for a sound walk, and I was a microphone on 2 legs with a set of binaural microphones thus the fluffy ears on this picture, and a contact mic. And these sounds that I recorded were live streamed to the studio where JD Zazie was sitting, and she did not know the place. She had never been there before, so she only received the sounds that I sent her. And then we imagined the place and did a live composition with the by body movement composed sounds that I sent her. And we were live on air for 2 hours, and then later I recomposed to 1 hour, and then this recomposed composition went back to the place in an app called GuideMate as an audio walk, and is now accessible to everyone who's interested. And these would be links number 3, and they will lead you to the Soundwalk composition and to the audio walk. So not all our sound walks get that much attention, unfortunately, but we offer them for experimental music festivals, for cultural institutions, for city planners, for community projects, for NGOs and universities, and anybody interested, really. And we like to listen to what is happening behind the walls, but also we could possibly be walking on a cemetery, as on this picture. There always is a blindfolded part where people really have to focus on listening and all other senses but vision. And we play with the directional hearing, we focus on reverb, try to include acoustic contrasts. Like on this picture, you see the green place, how do a green space sound, and how do bricks sound, for example. And we observe how the space changes the acoustic qualities. We make people run and listen to their own body sounds like breath and pulse. And we really, really like metal surfaces. So playing contact microphone by pushing the ear against a metal surface and listening how it sounds when moving a gate, for example, or hitting the metal surface with a stone, for example. Don't worry, there will not be a train passing. This is deserted, so it was safe to listen on the tracks of a train even. And then we have established a set of signs to direct people's attention to certain acoustic phenomena, or to direct the attention while listening in silence. And we're really not talking for 1.5 hours. So here, for example, you see my colleague Martina, to broaden the focus, she's telling the people by this sign, and to listen to distant sounds, and to narrow down on sounds close to us would be this sign, for example. Then we also always have a part of the sound walk where we hand out mics and recorders so people can experience how the technical equipment changes the listening experience. And it's always really fascinating to people. And then in the end, we always have a reflection round where we just gather and come all together and talk about the experience. During this sound walk, for example, it's located in the east of Leipzig. We also collected ideas for this wasteland that you can see us sitting on right here, because there's a community initiative that wants to create a community garden and park there. And we are collecting ideas after this intense period of listening, and it really changed the ideas that came up. And here's what participants said after one of our sound walks. This will be my last sound example.
this walk we're gonna start now, like really reflecting on the walk.
When you focus your attention on different sounds and on different the environment around you, it feels almost like looking at things.
In the beginning I heard something and then I turned around and wanted to see, and I don't know, but in the end, especially if were blinded, you couldn't do that.
I didn't find it that difficult to let go of my vision, but I was still deeply impressed how much more impact the focus on just one single set of impressions, and how deeply that moved me.
I know this place very well. So this is an old station, industrial area here. Comes back when you close your eyes at night and listen to the sounds here. The trains are braking and making like long sounds, really high.
What else do people hear? I like the descriptions into my ears. It's the microphone speaking now.
I always thought, oh no, not another fence, but every fence was different and it got better.
I really like the sound of the gate.
Yeah, the gate was.
I feel like I want to go back and listen to that gate again.
So many different sounds.
Yeah, there are different qualities to, I mean, first of all, there are sounds that we perceive in our everyday life, but now we're more focused on it. For example, the screeching sound of braking trains or people shuffling their feet on the ground. But also we just discovered the hidden sound of things by not perceiving them as what they are, as a structure or a handrail or something, but actively tapping into it by beating on it, scratching on it, maybe just gently touching it, stroking. But there were several sounds that were sort of reproducible, and there were several ones that were absolutely unique, and the gate was absolutely unique. It didn't sound the same. It was. I'm sort of speechless.
Yeah,
it's very
when you're very close, you also have the vibrations in your head.
Resonating mood.
And that's it. I'll skip the last part. I think the time is up.
That's really, really great and so nice to just really sit with those sounds that you were sharing and the recordings. Nice to not have 10-second extracts, but just have a few minutes to really get into them. And it'll be great, yeah, if you have any links where people can listen to these things, we can put them in a follow-up email and people can listen to the whole thing, or other similar examples.
Yeah, the links should already be in the chat. It's the links that I gave you that you posted.
Great. They are in the chat, and then I'll include them in the follow-up email, so you could just, if people can't save the chat links, you'll get it in your inbox. It'd be really great to, yeah, just open up the floor. There's a couple of questions in the Q&A. If anyone's got any more questions to any one of the presenters today, just put them in the Q&A. And if you want to join the stage, just click the button that says raise your hand and I'll bring you to the stage. You can turn on your video and mic and have a conversation. So one question that was asked earlier was, what's the experience been with field recording and COVID-19 lockdown? Has this created a new way to how we approach sound walking and listening now? Anyone want to share any thoughts on this?
I would say, to me, it didn't really change the experience, but I think for many people who were not into sound walking or field recordings before, the interest increased, it exploded. So suddenly with the first lockdown, media and so many people were interested in nature sounds, in sounds of people, in sounds of places, how they sounded before, because now everything was quiet, and this really changed. And then for a lot of field recordists, but I cannot say it's true for Leipzig, because we have an airport and it's not mainly for people, but for cargo. So it didn't stop. But apparently noise went down for a lot of people who live close to airports and who were also in lockdown then. So the quality of field recordings was better by reduced noise. And birds started to react to reduced noise. They started to sing louder because they had more, they could suddenly hear their rivals, for example, that before were swallowed by all the car noises. Stuff like this happened.
Yeah, absolutely. And just from my personal experience of the lockdown here in London, we have 5 airports around London. So you might not be near one, but there's planes constantly flying over any part of London. And suddenly the airplanes were gone, trains were reduced, no traffic on the streets, no schools and kids playing loud near the parks. And all of those sounds that we often tend to filter out, like you said earlier, suddenly weren't there to filter out. And I think that definitely helps with when we go out and there's not much stuff to filter out, our brains start to open up a little bit. And I guess that probably helps with people noticing these sounds more, noticing the bird song and noticing that there's interesting soundscapes around where they live. And that certainly was my experience. But yeah.
Oh, can I jump in here? Actually,
yeah, absolutely, Andrew.
I'd like to say lockdown's been a bit of a eye opener for a lot of people. I think exactly for what Carina's saying is that once the intrusive ambience noise of traffic and aircraft, that's what you've got to consider when you're composing your sound walk, is the ambient surroundings through which the people are going to walk. What are the sounds that you have? For lockdown for us in London, there's been no hold up on construction. So we've had incredible noise from construction. And of course, we can hear that now because some of it was being drowned out by aircraft. The worst thing you can get when you're out sound recording is a helicopter. And we've had quite a few of those because they kind of, I don't know what they're up to at the moment, but they're flying. So all those issues are sort of up and around. But the key thing for me is that I actually record people outside. And that's been extraordinarily difficult. And just to give you one example, there's a piece that we produced on Echoes last year, which is called 108. It's a fictional story of transposed actually from Cape Town to London and London to Cape Town. So when you're on the walking to the bus and on the 108 bus, you actually hear a different story. If you're in London, you hear the Cape Town story, and in Cape Town, you hear the London story. Now, as a continuation of the project, we've been interviewing people who live close to the bus stops by which the bus passes, and we've been having to do that as social distance. Now, that's been quite a challenge, I have to be honest. People don't like being approached by someone with a microphone on a very long arm. You've got to kind of think of how you do these things in a socially distant manner. And we also have to obviously think about that now, about people doing group walks or sharing equipment. You've got to think about sanitizing the equipment. So, there are lots and lots of issues that COVID have brought along, but it has actually created a fantastic opportunity to make incredible recordings in places which had previously been, had to put up with lots of aircraft or traffic.
That's great.
May I add to this? Babak. We're all wanting to speak on this topic. Joyce, go on.
Oh, thanks, Babak. I was going to let you go, but I was just going to go back to the listening paradigm because, of course, the recording is incredibly important. But I was going to say I think having daily walks has really opened up how people have approached structuring their day, and also, actually having the opportunity for a daily walk reminds people that they can go out every day and have a walk. and then consequently thinking about what you do on that walk while you're on your own normally during COVID. So it offered people an opportunity to think about different kinds of things, you know, their surroundings, and re-engaging with their community and being in the same place in different ways to experience that. So yeah, it's offered a listening opportunity for people, I think, which is really, really a positive thing.
Yeah, indeed. I'll reflect that what Josh is saying. One thing that is typical for many, but not all, but many sound walks as a consumer, the experience is inherently personal, individual. And that is something that we which is almost the only thing that we're allowed to consume outdoors nowadays, because we're not supposed to be in groups. So we have to do something that is personal and individual. And then what is the beauty really of sound walking, because the experience is auditory, the experience that you consume is unique. Even if somebody else listens to the same thing, they will pick up different things from the soundscape that is presented to them. And that actually ties into something else, which is related to tourism as a whole, even without, or also without COVID, with the restrictions that COVID has imposed on many of us. When being a tourist, when traveling, we all are looking for this unique experience, yet we all go to the exact same places and then look at the exact same things. But that experience is much more shared, whereas something that is auditory is individual. So that's just another thought. But yes, COVID has resulted in much more consumption of works like these.
Great, thanks, Babak. This is, yeah, all really, really good points. And we'll see also how that affects life post-COVID as well. How much of that will stick with us, how much will be forgotten, and how much we will care to preserve some of the sort of space that's been opened up because of less traffic, less aircraft, and so on. Another really interesting question by Joe Kennedy, who asks, is there a tension between wanting people to experience a place in real time, simply just listening in, compared with experiencing the sound imposed on the space through putting on the headphones? How do you work to ensure the added sounds are merged with the real-time sounds, as opposed to taking dominance and distracting people from experiencing the real-time space of where they are? Yeah, anyone who wants to jump in on that one? Babak?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer or to reflect on that question. It's a valid point, because the experience that you create if you focus more on the listening or the superposition is going to be completely different. So it's a valid concern. On the other hand, it's, as a creator, it's just your choice. I mean, not every audio or sound walking piece, not every audio piece is the same. And what it ends up being and how it is being consumed is a consequence of the vision of the creator, of the artist. So if you are preferring something that is more a superposition of sound onto the environment, or if you're preferring something that is more about listening to the environment, it's your choice. And you are the only one who can make this choice.
Yeah, totally agree. It's as an artist, it's always my choice, and it's my work that I apply all the means that I have in the way that suit my purpose or my artistic aim in the project. And I was thinking of another project that I did during lockdown. There was it's a fantastic project also. It's called 1000 Scores, and it's by Rimini Protocol, and they gather 1000 scores to tell you what to do or to give you some advice on what you could be doing. And I did a little sound walk where I guide people with my voice, but also add some sounds to it. And there it was really about fusing. It starts inside and then goes outside into the park. And I really wanted to fuse the sounds that I impose onto the location and also what people could see and hear around them to create this kind of mixed reality. And this then of course works if you have open headphones. But yeah, it's hard to decide as an artist what kind of headphones people are wearing. I can just give the advice, but then in other situations, I just want the place not as like a scenery, like a stage, and just to use the visuals to contrast maybe my sounds that I placed there. So it really depends.
That's great.
Can I just pop in here and just say that, yeah, I mean, you know, one of the frustrations I have is that quite a lot of people produce works which use Foley, use special effects, and to be honest, what I really like, you know, is that people actually take into account the ambience and record the ambience. So we did a piece which was in London for the National Gallery, and it was investigating the works of a Norwegian artist of the 19th century. And we obviously couldn't get to Norway, so we had to kind of think about how we could recreate what the sounds were of Norway. So we actually asked a natural sound recordist up in Northumberland to see whether he could mimic the sound of Norway, because it was about on the same latitude, and that's what he did. He did sort of similar sounds and brought that in. But then what we actually also used was the people listening to the geese that were already in the park, in St James's Park, that we were walking through. We got people using on-ear headphones, so they could hear the ambience as well. But of course, that was a kind of guided walk. So we were also kind of curating and guiding it, part pre-recorded, part the actual sounds. And it was for a commission. It was a commission piece. So therefore, we had to abide by what the concept was in the head of the National Gallery, in the heads of the National Gallery. But what was really incredible was that people demanded to go for it to keep going. So it was meant to run for 40 minutes, and that's all the time we had. And our licensing that we had to do and clearing of permissions, all sorts of things that have to go on, you have to think about for live events. We couldn't actually extend it or do it again. But it's one of those things which is quite remarkable. All the participants who were involved wanted it to continue.
That's great. Thanks so much, Andrew. And this sort of like, I think all of your responses also touch on another question I was asked around how much one considers ambient sounds that you cannot predict to be an integral part of the experience. And what you all said, it's as much a choice of the artist as anything else. And in the same way that if you get a composer who writes a classical piece of music for the concert hall, some of them will just write a piece on paper and it can be performed anywhere, and others will really take into consideration the acoustics of a particular space and will work with a particular space in a more of an installation way. And the same spectrum exists with this kind of work as well. You could really take into account, you could really ignore it and just have a superimposed audio and everything in between.
Can I add something to that?
Yeah, sure, Josh.
Just there was also a question raised about bone conductive headphones, which raises an interesting point, which is that when you're creating a sound walk, a geolocated piece that's designed to be listened to on headphones, you can't control how much background sound there is, what the mix is for the listener. So with bone conductive headphones, you've got literally there's zero cutout at all. There's it's a complete mix between the sound that you're listening to and the environment. So bone conductive headphones are something really interesting to work with. And then at the other end of the spectrum, you've got something like your headphones or the Apple AirPods, which completely reject all background sound if you want them to. And there's unless you say to the listener, okay, I want you to listen with noise cancelling headphones or bone conductive headphones, there's no way to control how the listener is going to experience it. So yeah, it's it's definitely something which needs some research, maybe some further thought.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. And that comes back to, well, a question asked about authoring or creating a space that if you have that possibility of working with a space and having control over a space, you could offer the equipment and therefore create a sort of standard playing field for all the people who experience the work, because you give them the equipment, you curate more aspects of that experience, and that is different when you're just putting work out there to be experienced by anyone. It's a case of, yeah, the reach of the project. If you want it to be listened to by anyone in the world, you've got to take into account all those differences in equipment and background sounds and all of that. And if you have more control over it, of course, you could be more explicit about how you want to include or involve the outside sounds. One question by Carla is about if anyone's got any recommendations for works and platforms that you find inspiring at the intersection of experimental artistic methods and research. If you want to read the whole question in the Q&A, if anyone's got anything to share about platforms or works that might relate to what Carla's asking about.
I got a short comment on that. Thanks for the question, Carla. This work that touches upon these topics, I would love to see more of. So if you have suggestions, then we would, or I am very keen on hearing them. But I can give you one work that is related to your question. It's called Homemakers. It was shortlisted last year for the Soundwalk September Awards. And it is a series of interviews of domestic workers, mostly from the Philippines, who are almost modern day slaves in, I want to say, the Lebanon, but I'm not totally sure, who some of them have escaped from their modern, what do you call this, indenture. So that touches sort of like on those subjects, homemakers. But that's off the top of my head the only example that I can come up with. Sorry, it's Homemaker Sounds, actually.
Great, I've put a link. I found a link on the Walk, Listen, Create website, and I added it to the as a response. What I'll also do as well, when I send the follow-up email, I'll gather all the questions together and the responses and put them in a document. So again, you don't have to save any of this; it will all come with the follow-up email. But yeah, and the other thing is just to connect. So connect with people on social media. Find the Facebook pages some people have been referring to in this chat box, and that you'll get in the follow-up email. Connect on Twitter, connect on social media, and sign up for newsletters, and just get in touch with other practitioners where you live and around the world who will know these places and know those platforms. And I guess that's exactly what Walk, Listen, Create is aiming to create, is a global community of people who are interested in this work and can help support each other to find the things they're looking for. So I think this is more or less it. I think this is it. No more questions. We've done it. We've answered them all. Great. Well, thanks very much, everyone. I'm going to run a last poll, which is a sort of closing poll. So I'm going to leave that running right now. So before you leave this event, just type in a couple of questions. It's just, how would you rate today's session generally, arbitrarily from 1 to 10? And do you feel you have a better understanding of what sound walking and locative work is and how to start getting involved? Any other comments, just put them in the chat box. It has been recorded. I'll edit it a little bit to remove the break and stuff, and we will be uploaded with captions on YouTube. It'll be a private link, but it'll be sent to you in a follow-up email. So that'll all come through hopefully by end of tomorrow. Any final comments or thoughts, put them in the chat box. Otherwise, yeah, just thanks very much everyone for joining. And thanks to Babak for the initial conversation we had, and to Josh as well, who signposted me to Babak, and to Andrew for joining in and sharing your wonderful experiences, to Gert for being on the call as well, and to Carina, of course, for just taking us through a beautiful tour of all the work she's created and the breadth of work that one can create in this field and the endless possibilities, really. So hopefully you'll have time to explore all of this in your own time by digging into all of the links that we'll share in the follow-up email. Great. So I'm going to stop this.